Well, hello there. I promised a Q&A and the skiing season is open, so I have the nice places to record again. Were you expecting a Sword Online movie upcoming? Well, the best we can do is a Demon's Crest anime announcement. Much like I expected Sun today, but this is what we got, so you're gonna have to deal with it. Jokes aside though, one of the most wanted questions is probably when we're gonna hear something about the SAO movie. I expect to hear something at Anime Japan in March of 2026. They seem to be ramping up towards something with all the merch and stuff. That's all I'm gonna say. We're gonna look forward to March for now. Aside from that, we're just gonna continue with, well, start with the Q&A for starters. I don't have much time. I don't know how the weather will go. I don't have much battery to keep reading the questions. We're gonna do as much as possible as this first batch, and then maybe I'll record some other day when we actually have proper weather, so it's nice to watch as well. First one is from Jay. Again, I'm starting with Twitter. I have tons of questions on Facebook and YouTube as well. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them on all of the platforms. It's perfectly fine. I will sort by the most recent ones at the end again and then answer all the questions. Please ask in-depth questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to answer in text, not in video. But Jay asks, what kind of special backstory do you think we'll see for the rest of the Gameverse characters? Anything special you want to know about them? If you didn't know, Sword Online Games are currently sharing secret backstories. They're calling it, just to make it sound a little bit more than they are. But they're sharing additional backstory or information about the Sword Online Gameverse characters based on some questions people have submitted for the Kitakyushu Pop Festival back 2 weeks ago, mid-November it was. And now they're sharing them on their Twitter accounts as well. And we're getting some neat details here and there. You know, we had something about Philia's family. We had some interactions between Stre and Yui. And last but not least, yesterday, day 3, we had Fuka about her name. That's been inspired by a song. I expect it to be a song from 2005. I did look into the kanji and all those kinds of stuff. But personally, I don't know what we will see. So far, they have been all over the place. They're literally the definition of random trivia at the moment. What I'm hoping for, however, especially for real human characters, not the digital characters we have like Premiere and Tia, I do want to know more about the real lives of these characters, because as you all know, as you most probably know, aside from Lost Song with Seven and Rain, SAO games have never touched the real world aspect of the series at all. Oh, now that was a nice jump back there. So I do want to hear more about the real lives of these characters. Philia has given us a little bit of that. You know, that brother came out completely out of nowhere. I don't, on the top of my mind, recall anything that's been teased about her having a sibling in the games or anything, and we had tons of obvious opportunities to state if that was ever the case. That was a bit from out of the left field, but it was a nice little detail. It gave a little bit more context to her real life as well as her relationship with her mother, so that was nice. I expect to see more of those for all the other real human characters. For Tia and Premiere, I don't know. For Dorothy, you can again do something nice because she technically has a full-on proper life as well, just in Underworld and things like that. So that's kind of sort of what I'm hoping to see. Maybe something to make Medina a little bit more likable. Still, I have hopes for that because she continues to be the most unlikable character ever in the entire series. But that's pretty much it to answer that question. What is my phone even doing? For Fractured Daydream, if an end of service is not going to happen. So we need to be very specific about the terminology here. SAOFD is not going to go to an end of service where you can no longer access the game at all. First off, it's on consoles. I'm pretty sure they're just going to keep the multiplayer servers alive. What I'm expecting is an end of support. So it's not going to get any more. Maybe it's going to get bug fixes here and there if anything crops up. But I don't, at this point, at the current state, you know, we have no news. We have nothing whatsoever. And Season 5 has been quite barren. What I'm expecting is an end of support. So no more DLCs. Maybe they can push like 2-3 other characters that already exist in the game, the ALO variants of certain characters, through the store like they did with Kirito. Again, it's a little bit too expensive if you ask me. It's not fair pricing at all, but they may do that. But no more DLC, no more like large-scale content updates or anything, just end of support. I shouldn't worry you too much. As I said, I expect the multiplayer servers to remain up. Hollow Fragment, the damn game from 10 years ago, still has multiplayer servers up. So Don't worry about an end of service. It's going to keep going. You can still, grab your friends, or if it's during a high point, you can still get into matchmaking lobbies and stuff if it ever comes to that. But even then, the game has a huge single player campaign with high production. You will be able to access the game. As for when we'll hear about an end of support, if you're asking, Season 6 may be it. We're close, we're just gonna have to wait and see. If not, what do you think the next character? Okay, I technically answered that. How much do you miss the Gameverse series? Do you miss it at all and wanted it to continue still, or not so much? I think Gameverse had its run. I think it had a good journey, and I think they stopped at a good point. Especially the Alicization Lycoris, the entire adventure we had, partially fueled by COVID as well, had been an extremely exhausting journey. It was also reflected in the Last Collection promotion, and then followed by Last Collection's the sales being extremely low compared to all the SAO games. People were exhausted, even Last Collection at that point was a bit too much. If Alicization Lycoris did not have any of those issues, if we didn't have COVID, Last Collection would have been the perfect time to stop. But with all the issues COVID ensued, I feel like Last Collection really pushed a bit too much for the gamers, and it's nice that we are having, let's say, a break in quotes, because I feel like the moment Unital Ring starts coming up into the hype wave, I feel like we're gonna get something in the Gameverse with Unital Ring. Don't quote me on that, but I absolutely would not be surprised if it happens. I low-key expect it to happen. Moving on, Philia. Is that a chopper coming this way? My mic is gonna pick it up. This is really not a good mic, but I can't have my usual studio mic here, so. Okay, with the chopper gone, we can actually continue. Philia asks, at one point, early previews suggested that the Gameverse characters were not going to appear in Alicization Lycoris. Do you think this was a practical gameplay story choice or indicative of a desire to move on from the prior games? I don't think they were trying to move on from the prior games with Alicization Lycoris. I think they were doing the right call of actually making the story and characters focused within Underworld. I think that was a very intentional choice. And even then, on release, the audio drama we got, it was basically Gameverse characters trying to find a way to get themselves into the Alicization Lycoris setting with the Wayfarers and stuff, which eventually happened. It was always planned. It was just that they wanted the core story to remain an Underworld-focused one. And the second question, by Philia again, odds a main character gets wiped in Unital Ring, and who? I don't think anyone will actually get wiped in Unital Ring. I feel like they will all survive, because we still don't know what will happen if someone loses a character in Unital Ring, what happens to their account. And I don't think we're gonna be waiting for that answer with a character actually wiped that we know and care about. But if someone has to, I feel like Klein is a good choice to sacrifice himself. Like, he is really the one character who can go out the blazing way by saving others in the meanwhile. Similar to what he tried to do against AG in Ornal Scale. But I don't think anything's gonna happen with that. Missy asks, assuming they would make an anime adaptation of one of the games, console and or mobile, which would you like to see and why? That was a great question. I actually answered in text very shortly, but I wanted to elaborate a bit. I feel like most of the Gameverse games, specifically talking about the console games, they don't lend themselves well to an anime adaptation. I feel like the games are stretched so thin that between plot points, we have way too much filler segments for the gameplay to ensue. If a Gameverse game were to be adapted, I would expect something along the lines of, the Pokemon shorts, right? 3 to 5 minute little shorts, multiple episodes they kept uploading to the Pokemon YouTube channel. If the Gameverse were to get an adaptation, I definitely feel like we would have to have something like that. And I think it's the perfect format to cover most of the Gameverse. Otherwise, for a continuous adaptation, I think Last Collection lends itself the best, because it's the most story-focused one. It was literally the one that, I don't want to say waste your time with gameplay, because that's not what it is, but forced you into elongated periods of gameplay just for the sake of having you play something. That was the one game that didn't do it at all. It was a story that's constantly flowing forward. So I think Last Collection would be a good choice for a proper anime adaptation. Every single other Gameverse game on consoles, I think shorts with those highlight story points, that would be the perfect choice there. As for mobiles, you can't do anything with memory defrag. You can do a lot with integral factor, but oh my god, that would be an endless anime at this point. It is very, very long. Maybe one episode per maybe one episode per floor if you can condense everything, which I feel like you can condense a visual novel in that sense, but I can't be so sure. Unleash Blading, that's basically Alicization and then extended material, non-canon, but very closely related. I think that would confuse people. It would be a good adaptation, I think, but it would be confusing, and it's not a route I would want them to take because it's so closely related to the series. I think the story with Variant Showdown is great, but I think the story is extremely short as well. I think it's becoming extremely apparent. I keep saying extremely a lot, but it's really to the extreme. I think it's becoming very apparent with their web novelization of the entire Variant Showdown story. If you recall the Unleash Blading web novelization of parts of their original story that they couldn't put into the game before the shutdown, it was really long. Like, it was full of content. When you look at Variant Showdown stuff right now, it's literally a single page you can read very quickly per chapter. The game has only 4 chapters, and per chapter, one chapter is very easy to read, very short. I don't think there is enough length to adapt anything in Variant Showdown. And I think that's the reason why they always drip-fed the story, the original story and the rewritten story. Both of them, they did that. And I think that's the reason the story is just extremely short, despite being a nice and heartwarming story. Neo has countless questions. I will look at your stuff in a different video, Neo, because I need to catch the bus. I have 20 minutes. I need to answer a couple more questions. I cannot answer over 24 questions right now. That's going to be in a separate batch. I'm sorry. Lisa, a fellow cosplayer, says, if there was something you would have liked to see the story dive into detail more or change, what would it have been? Was there anything disappointing to you, or you felt needed to build more on it and felt lacking? These are the great questions. You know, I love these kinds of stuff. The only part that I never answer is what would you change, because I'm pretty hell-bent there. It's not my story, even though if I don't like it, I think Ricky should do what he feels like doing. That's his story, and I don't get to say anything at all when it comes to, do you want to change this or that? No, I don't want to change anything. I want it to be as it is. It's not my story to tell. Something I would have liked to see the story dive into detail more. That's a very comprehensive question. I probably should have read the questions before and prepared some answers. It's going to be a kind of a cop-out answer, but I really don't want to see more of the main stories, especially with the Unital Ring and later progressive stories. I feel like they're already getting too bloated. Ricky is telling us too much, most of which we don't necessarily need to know, or going, you know, out of the path that he should be going. I really would have liked to see more side stories in general, because as I keep saying, I repeat this way too much wherever I talk, but Ricky is at his best when he has a clear page constraint where he has to fit a very focused narrative-driven story, character-focused narrative-driven story. That's what he does best in the side stories. You know, Hopeful Chant, The First Day, Cordial Chords, not so much. That was a bit too exposition heavy just to tie up the loose end from Ordinal Scale. Rainbow Bridge, The Day Before, The Day After, those kinds of side stories, I think they're wonderful. Instead of constantly going off the normal path he should go, he should be picking those moments that he wants to elaborate on in the main stories. In Unital Ring, for example, he keeps referencing 50,000 stuff that he doesn't have to. He should be really taking those things, mentioning them there, but not going into it at all, because that's just bloat for the main story. Keep them in the pocket and turn those details into nice, focused side stories where you can focus on the characters and the events themselves. I think that would be lovely. Was there anything disappointing to you? Incarnation. I keep saying this. Human Realm sub-arc of Alicization really set it up in a grounded way. You know, it was still a magic system, sure. It was still a soft magic system with unclear limits, sure. But the groundwork was very well paved there. We got into War of Underworld. We had to power creep above it. We had the Maniac Gabriel. We had the main visualizer connected Kirito. Everyone doing all the stupid stuff. And Incarnation kind of lost its impact. Because when you can use it, however, when you use it like the Force, how it is in the recent Star Wars movies, where it's basically a get out of jail free card. You know, you set up some stakes. How are they gonna solve it? Oh, how are they gonna outsmart the villain? Oh, they're just gonna yell louder, and you know, Incarnation will handle it. And that's my biggest disappointment. And even bigger disappointment is the fact that we went back to Underworld for Unital Ring parts as well, where we couldn't get rid of Incarnation, basically. You know, that's two disappointments building upon each other. I am going to answer one last question because then I need to go. I'm kind of cutting it short. How did you discover SAO and how your love for the series was like for you at the time? It was ages ago, and it's going to sound very anticlimactic. I saw all the memes about SAO on 9gag. It was really popular at the time, both SAO and 9gag. And everyone was like complaining, oh, the first season was great, but then they just copped out of the main story and turned it into this weird, stupid series. And I was like, it can't be that bad. I'm gonna watch it myself and I'm gonna have my own opinion, because I'm like that. I don't like tagging along with an opinion. If I see people having a strong opinion, that's why I always respond the way I do for I don't want to say hot takes, but like extreme takes that are way too emotional. I always try to approach from a central standpoint. It always makes me look like the villain because I'm always going against the popular opinion, and people always have a problem with that because they want validation of masses, and I don't want that. So I try to always go for a central path. That was kind of my habit back then as well. There's so much hate and complaint that seems extremely emotional. I want to see what that is, and I want to have my own opinion. And that's what I did. I watched SAO myself. I built my own opinion. I loved it. I enjoyed Fairy Dance. I didn't hate it or anything at my first watch. Second and third watch, you know, I started to understand that it wasn't Kirito and Asuna's story in Fairy Dance. It was Suguha's story of having this very unfortunate streak of events that she was already trying to, well, she had basically pushed herself out of back in the past, and suddenly through these unfortunate events she got back into it. It's the entire tough luck that she has there that pushes her into that, and it was Sugu's story. It wasn't Kirito and Asuna. They were just for the action catalyst. And when you look at Fairy Dance that way, you know, it becomes a really, really compelling and heartwarming story. Not heartwarming, oh my god, that bittersweet stuff. But yeah, the rest of the arcs, already there wasn't much of a problem with them. So, you know, I love them. And I got into the series. I got into the sort of my subreddit, shared opinions, and then I found the Wikia. And at that point, no, I was already way too far deep into the loop. And here we are. But that's going to be all the answers for this first batch. I have tons of other questions, but I need to catch my bus. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. If you have questions, do go to my Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. The post is going to be there. You may need to scroll a bit if you're watching this a day or two late, but do ask your questions there. I am going through every single one that I didn't answer, and I'm going to do it when the weather is a bit nicer as well, because my hands are actually frozen. So until next time, stay cool.